Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining Rooker's technical knowledge dissemination sessions. Today's session is all about Epicor performance management. We would be recording this session for our internal compliance and quality purpose. I welcome on behalf of Rooker to the one and all who has joined this session. Today's agenda would be initial deployment of basic best practices within the enterprise. How do you manage your operating systems and SQL patching? How do we do an ongoing review and refactoring tip tools and techniques to maintain optimal performance and ongoing learning guide in terms of how to take care of your infrastructure from an Epicor performance standpoint. These are the points we would discuss initially. Followed by that, we would take probably a couple of minutes to discuss about Ruka, and we would take questions thereafter. So please feel free to post your questions on the questions panel that's available on the Windows panel that's given by the webinar software. Today's agenda, as I explained, why ERP performance is very important. What are the key considerations for the performance tuning? How Rooker can help you, followed by a real-life case study that we have faced and solved it end-to-end. And about Rooker, as I told you a couple of minutes, we would speak about it, followed by a question and answer session. That's going to be an agenda for the day. Today's speakers are Mr. Ramchandran Raghavendran and Mr. Nitish Ramanathan. Mr. Ramchandran is our head IT infrastructure for Rooker, comes with more than 2 decades of experience in IT, and is a subject matter expert, comes with intense technical know-how on implementing technology programs for enterprise-wide practices specific to IT infrastructure. He has managed multiple data centers and infrastructures for global customers involving thousands of users. The second speaker for the day is Mr. Nitish Ramanathan. He is our solutions architect. He comes with close to 10 years of experience in Epicor and Microsoft technology. Nitish has deep expertise in technical consulting. He has a profound knowledge on implementation and optimization of Epicor ERP, with strong expertise and experience in identifying relevant solutions that helps customers in setting up Epicor's powerful tools like data analytics, building tools around Epicor, or helping customers integrate their third-party products. Over the last few years, he has worked extensively on large implementation on numerous ERP clients across the world. Myself, I am Srikanth Ramakrishnan. I will be the moderator for today's webinar. I'm a channel director with Rooker IT Consulting. I've been working with the IT industry for more than 2 decades, largely focusing on IT delivery, managing center of excellences, building up very large teams, largely driven by strategic IT transformations. Currently, we have been building and managing partner ecosystem for Rooker, through which we can provide cutting-edge solutions to our customers in these regions, especially Middle East. So far, we have inducted nearly 6 partners, and 4 more are in the incubation phase, totaling up to 10 in this region. We will be providing our cutting-edge solutions and technology services to our esteemed customers through these channels, and we would empower our partner network to do successful business transformation to end customers. That's the discussion about the current context. Over to you, Rama. Please take over from here.
Thank you, Sri. Hello, everybody. I am Rama. Once again, welcome to this webinar on Epicor Performance Management. What we will do in the next half an hour or so is to cover some process aspects governing the design and implementation of the Epicor infrastructure. We will touch upon a few technicals, and then we will discuss a few real-life engagements related to the subject matter, and then we will leave it to Sri to moderate the Q&A session. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide, please, Sri. Okay. Why is Epicor performance management is important? It is important for business stakeholders to understand the importance of performance aspects early on in the implementation phase. This will ensure that these requirements are adequately defined, budgeted, and tested for. Businesses spend a lot of effort in ERP product selection. They spend a lot of time analyzing the business process, modeling how these should look like before they make a decision on buying the ERP product. Once a decision is made, the procurement and implementation phases kick in. These phases also involve people's time and monetary investments. At the end of all of this, it is very important that businesses end up with an optimally performing and stable Epicor application. If not, user adoption and morale suffers. This in turn can badly affect the expected business productivity and the quality goals. To achieve a performing and a stable Epicor application, the underlying infrastructure should be well designed, deployed, configured, and maintained. Next slide, please. Let us now dwell upon the process that will help to deliver an infra that will support an optimally performing application. Next slide, please. There is not one single silver bullet that will solve the performance issues with the Epicor 10 ERP application. It is more an issue of getting a set of fundamentals right. We have been in many crisis meetings with our customers related to performance. Looking back, in almost all of them, the fix has been on the fundamentals of the infrastructure and application management. The fundamentals can be organized along the following lines. Assessing the service requirements related to performance, availability, and data protection, to name the key ones. And then from a DR point of view, there are wishes surrounding the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective. The infra design should take into consideration these aspects. Once the requirements are defined, then it is a question of selecting the infrastructure grades in the proper manner. We will come to this in a bit more detail in the next slide. Once we selected the right infrastructure grades, then it's a question of designing the infra deployment, the number of servers, the scale, load balancing, etc., considering the number and the locational spread of users and the expected data growth. And then we need to put in process to maintain the infrastructure in a proper manner. Very importantly, something that we have seen missing with many customers is to have a robust process in place to review and revalidate the key service metrics and the benchmarking on a periodic basis. We will see why in the next slides. And then, of course, we need to put solid processes to manage code changes to the application. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Here we will see a few deployment operations. This is a single server deployment suited for a small user base. So here you have a single VM where all the components of Epicor are deployed in, the application components and the database components. Next slide, please. This is an example of a multi-server deployment. To the right, you have a dedicated VM for the database server. And to the left, you have the dedicated VM for the Epicor application server. There are different ways in which the UI can be presented to the end users. Some customers deploy the smart client directly on the PCs, and some customers choose to deliver the UI in a Citrix virtualization setup or any virtualization setup like Parallels, etc. Now, coming upon the basic infrastructure requirement, we recommend that the CPU should be of at least 3 GHz clock speed and a very low latency network connectivity between the servers and a disk with a good throughput and a low latency, preferably solid state drives. From our experience, we have seen that the smart client is good for WAN latencies of less than 60 milliseconds. For higher WAN latencies, we recommend that you use application virtualization techniques like Citrix or Parallels. Next slide, please. When do you need to review the performance? As I said earlier, this is a key step that is missing with many of our customers. During the course of an application, a lot of changes happens to it, outside it, and to it. The changes can be onboarding a significant number of users, adding new user sites, and some of them can be remote sites, major upgrades of the Microsoft platforms, or even the Epicor product itself, and the major new integrations being deployed like Service Connect, Excel Connect, Docstar, etc. All of these things can place increasing load on their infrastructure. This can result in user complaints of sluggish performance, system crashes, frozen and broken technical processes. Infra resources like CPU, memory, storage, and network can get overloaded. An overloaded infra can result in too many alerts from the monitoring system, potentially overwhelming your IT technical staff. Obsolete versions of the operating system and SQL can lead to performance, stability, and security issues. Non-standard deployments on configuration can remain in the system if they are not reviewed properly. This can leave you in a permanent state of firefighting. Hence, it is very important to review the infra deployment on a periodic basis to identify the scale up and the scale out needs. Next, Nitish will give you an overview on what is involved in the infra review. He will also touch upon the Epicor component architecture. He will explain the key platform and the technologies involved in it. You can appreciate the width and depth of the skills needed to maintain the Epicor application. Nitish will also touch upon how we can help you in this journey. Nitish, over to you.
Thank you, Rama. Thank you, Sri. That was a brilliant prelude. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nitish, and I'm very excited, as usual, to provide my insights today. It's my third webinar on RIC's webinar season, and I'll start reviewing the deployment, which is currently being shown on the screen. Performance diagnostic tool is one of the cool tools which we have ever worked upon. So I'm going to start by introducing the performance diagnostic tool. It helps you to capture the performance information, and you can organize this information to receive meaningful meaningful matrices that relates to the performance of your Epicor ERP application. You can evaluate, for example, the performance of one client versus another client on the same system, or the performance of business object methods on both the client and the server, or the performance of business objects in one system against the business object on other systems, or the performance of customizations, personalizations, or all the unique business components that you have got in the system. So that, in fact, you get an opportunity to basically check the configuration of your ERP application to understand that whether you've turned on the PE log, which Epicor doesn't recommend to do that in the production environment, etc. So that is one of the tools which we basically rely upon to gather the information, obviously, because there are a lot of information which you obviously will receive from the tool and can generate through multiple ways through the tool. However, it's very important how best you can conceive those informations generated out of the tool and present in the data point, which must be context aware. There are a few tests which takes precedence, obviously, because you get a lot of other tests. For example, server config checks. That essentially gets you the, or that must be passed on a fair point when you try to do the PDT checks. And then you also have an opportunity to measure the current performance and compare it with the Epicor's benchmark. As I mentioned, it's important that how best we can consume the data produced by PDT and generate a report or maybe a document that explains the performance bottlenecks, if any. This is where we show the difference, obviously, right? Because we have developed tools that uses robotic process automations and uses RESTful APIs, etc., to measure the current performance and benchmark against the Epicor standard set of rules. We've written routine programs that essentially doing the config checks or health checks, etc. Right. Now let's look into how to maintain the infrastructures again. Patching the OS and SQL regularly. This is a very important thing that we are supposed to do. And we should have always a good backup plan for the SQL, which is obviously something that everybody does, but I just wanted to mention that. But think about this. A typical plan can be a T-log taken every 30 minutes, a daily differential, and weekly something of that sort. Of course, you need to understand the backup strategy to design something of it, but this is one of the examples which we generally take up. And incorporate a robust weekly maintenance plan for the SQL, because SQL is obviously one of the places where people can, plug upon. So that is one thing. Now, moving on to the next slide. Let us now actually get an overview, because we have to talk the elephant in the room. So let's now get an overview of the Epicor ERP component architecture, because this is one of the cool things that I would like to always explain on my trainings. I will also give you an overview of the platform and technologies involved and the skill required to build and maintain these components. Right, let's get into it. The first component is Epicor Client, which is standing on the top of the picture. This is the Epicor Client and its visual representation of the application presented to the end users. And this is where you start entering the data. And this is a .NET-based application, so essentially you get DLLs lying on your physical computers, or sometimes you probably use something called as a web access or things like that. All right, the next one is basically application server. Now, this is an application server, also called as an app server by some of my colleagues. It manages the specific instance of the Epicor ERP application, such as configure licenses, companies, sessions, and users for the specific databases. It handles the business logic determining how the incoming data interacts with the Epicor database and displays on the end user interface. Sri, I think that slide went on one, so if you can go back. Each application server interact with the virtual directory. And obviously, that is how it basically goes on. As you can see, the client interaction is always with the application server on that particular screen, isn't it? Yeah, there you go, back on the slide. Thank you. Now, the process server is another component which you can essentially see it in the picture there. This is a process server. It stores the metadata and object definitions required to generate reports and run database processes. It's important that it requires there, for example, if you submit an invoice report or probably scheduling an MRP or probably using a purchase order suggestion, these executes on the process server. Please note that the process server can be in an application server itself for the small deployment, which I think we have seen before, that you can have a single or multi-server deployments accordingly, right? Now, the next component is the task agent. It is essentially a Windows service, obviously. I've definitely heard the fact that the rumors around the Epicor world that the task agent is going to be rewritten into a separate module altogether, but we will wait for the update from Epicor to look into that point. But however, it is the heart of the processes, which means it's essentially a Windows service that handles all scheduled tasks within the Epicor ERP application. So anything you're trying to schedule, such as multi-company processes or such as MRP, as I was mentioning before, everything is basically been used as the task agents. In fact, you do have an opportunity to create the task agent rules, which not many people are really getting into that, but then that's a brilliant way to do the load balancing. Like, you could always have an opportunity to schedule all your hefty tasks, such as purchase order suggestions, and again MRPs, which can contribute to the whole systems that can potentially be moved to do a separate app servers through the tasking rules. Well, the next component is the administrator's a special component. That's an admin console, or you can call it as Epicor administration console. You can use the administration console to manage the Epicor ERP application by creating an application server instances, or probably creating a database that can be a demo database in certain cases, or a fresh database with a fresh schema in it. And then you can also use this an enterprise search servers. So that's where you basically use these informations over there. But the update on 10 to 600's latest build is the fact that you really do not require us to do the indexing for the enterprise searches from the admin console anymore. You have an opportunity to do this through the screen, which has been basically developed inside the system. So that's actually one big step for me. All right. Now you have an Epicor 10 database. Now this is essentially your logical disk that contains your Epicor data. It just simply consists of your ERP data. That's all it is, right? And now you have a reporting server. The Microsoft reporting server is the service. Essentially, that is your Microsoft component itself that handles the data processing, report rendering, and data delivery tasks for the SQL reporting services, or you simply call it as SSRS. And you also have this special database when it comes to the deployment, isn't it? It's called as Epicor SSRS dataset databases. Now, each report must contain a dataset that holds the data pulled by a query from the Epicor 10 database. The dataset consists of a query, a collection of data in it, or parameters, or filters, and other data options, obviously. This dataset defines the data that displays on the rendered report. So essentially, if you try to submit a report, what it basically does is the fact that the task agent does query this information. Obviously, have more concept in the task agent part, which I don't want to get into detail, but task agent basically does the priority pulling and then bring those informations and put this information as a data set in this special database, which we have called as SSRS database or dataset database inside. And now, the next logical step is this crystal report engine that works with XML. Now you have the SSRS engine, which essentially goes and query your dataset database and try to render into your output format which you have chosen. For example, in the PDF format in this case, or probably an Excel or an XML or the Word, depends. So that is the role of an SSRS dataset databases. Of course, our system administration course covers all these subjects in detail if you want to get deeper into the subjects. Of course, in order to get a better performance and a best value out of your investment, as I was explaining about the technologies involved, the IT team will need the following skills, or some of these skills, at least 90% of them, to get an efficient working on. I'm going to talk about the infrastructure perspective. I'm also going to talk about the application perspective so that you can get, a breadth in with what we are talking about. So from the infra standpoint, you have an opportunity or you do have to have knowledge in terms of ADDS, DNS, Kerberos, IaaS, networking, application delivery controllers, firewalls, debugging tools like sysinternal suites, Wireshark, crash dump analysis. In fact, performance analysis logs, in certain cases, we have to go that extreme, and then Windows even log and performance counters, and again, the PDTs and analyzing skills. That includes interpreting the data using various tools such as Python and the BI programs which we developed internally. Now, from application perspective, you have got the SQL administration, TS programming, C#, probably VB.NET. Sometimes people does the other way around. I'll link you Infrajustics on some cases, SDKs on some cases, and technologies like the REST, SOAP, OData integrations, or probably things like Service Connect, or the newly came up scenarios such as Deribit, or some analytical tools or business intelligence tool. But trust me, this list can literally go on. So you could now understand that this is one of the biggest skill sets which you essentially have to undergo if you're using the infra perspectives and application perspective. Right, now, how can we help? So that's the next slide. As a company, we have implemented several performance improvement projects for various customers across the globe. And that is where it makes a more difference, because we execute this as a separate project, not like a project within a project, which is a brilliant thing. As shown in the previous slides, there are several skills needed to design, deploy, configure, and operate the infrastructure application that will help towards a better performance management and end user satisfaction. Let's take some common challenges faced by customers. A small IT department usually dealing with the disparate applications at one time. It's almost difficult to find one or two people who can manage the whole range of platforms and technologies which we try to explain. limitations of Epicor specific knowledge and skill related to infra and solutions, a limitation of time to carry out deep analysis of the various blocks and processes which are generated by the tools such as PAL or PDT, etc. And again, a limited programming and experience in terms of how to program things pretty much in the standard of how we need to program it. And obviously, the one big factor is lack of time and limited tools and the skill to perform load and regression testings. Now, how are we basically helping overcome these challenges? We have been supporting Epicor applications and infrastructure for the last 8 years, or very many customers globally. We have the width and the depth of the skills demanded by the Epicor architecture. We also have a culture of sharing of documents or over experience and continuous learning. All our experiences is captured in a knowledge base and execution methodology. So we do this thoroughly through a scientific scenario rather than we do through our intuitions, which has got a richer by time. That's a good point. And this helps to deliver right solution to our customers very quickly rather than we invest a lot of time in analyzing that. And we also have special in-house tools for load testing and regression testings and data mining, etc. And we also have in automations and operations and maintenance, obviously. And we also have expertise in security assessment and implementation of remedies such as CIS standard implementation. We have experienced team of developers, not only in Epicor, which is the bigger plus point, only also on the ancillary products offered by Epicor. Now, we have a proven experience in helping customers to gain better performance in the Epicor and ancillary systems, obviously. And that said, we are a full package of partners who can design your infra, deliver the proper solutions, and provide you premium support. All right, let's get to the next slide. Epicor is a very popular software among developers as a result of a very established framework. It gives you the ability to customize the product whichever you want, which is a very positive thing for all the people. So the comfort level for the developers, which is offered by Epicor, has been not offered in any other ERP products, which is a brilliant news. But point is, if not designed correctly, as we have seen before, this can probably deal into the performance problems as well. So think about the fact if you're running a race, so the number one position, obviously, let's wait, let's not go to the number one. So let's start on the number three positions are obviously secured by the customer procedures and customizations, as you can see on the screen. The number second position is secured obviously by the BPM and the typical precedence over to the in-transaction directive, not the method directives, because in-transaction has the ability to hit the database directly. So a for each within for each, as simple as that, it potentially creates an infinite loop, and then it not only chokes your system, but it also goes into the SQL, creates a chaos in the CPU of it. Thus, by creating an issue in the application server, thus creates an issue for those people who connected to that application server. Well, obviously, you can see the number one position as basically going to the BAQ. This is also because BAQ is the backbone of the many components, such as dashboards, reports, custom searches, even the SharePoint publishers, and et cetera, et cetera. And now, coming back to the champion, obviously, right? BAQ is very easy to design, and in fact, it does not require a very major knowledge in terms of SQL, etc. As I was mentioning, it's a good thing for most of us because it's not necessarily that the product is so comfortable and flexible for the people to design things. However, if this can potentially break the SQL if you design it poorly. Can you believe that? It do happen for us quite sometimes with some of the customers. In fact, I've tried writing a blog on a very fundamental and key perspective of the query execution plans, because that is where you can figure it out that how your BAQs are essentially executing properly, etc. You're more than welcome to take a look into our Radix blog. You definitely never know that you might also see some more interesting topics in the Radix blog. Well, consider those as bonuses. Well, the performance impacts on these components can vary from deployment to deployment. Can be debated that some of these components actually span categories, but we placed based on what we have observed over these years. All right, now let's get into the recent highlights, because this is very exciting for us, isn't it? So let's get into the recent highlights on Epicor's performance related case studies, which we have done recently during the past. So let's get into it. Rama, would you like to start with your experience now?
Thank you, Nitish. We would like to take this opportunity to explain a couple of the recent work that we did in performance improvement projects for our customers. We had this global customer on-premise Epicor deployment ran into performance issues after adding 2 new sites. So 150 concurrent licenses, about 250 users, 4 sites, they just added 2 new sites. This was a voice of customer challenge. There were hundreds of help desk tickets, and there was no discerning pattern in the tickets on the face of it. So what we did was we deployed our robotic process automation suite in the various sites, and then we measured the actual performance of the key transactions. We also used NLP techniques on the tickets, and we found out that the logon was very particularly slow for end users. What we found was that the Citrix servers were getting heavily loaded, and we recommended to the customer to add a new Citrix servers. And we also found that the slow logon was due to the improper placement of the Citrix profile servers. That was rectified. On top of it, we requested the customer to put antivirus exclusion for the key Epicor processes. The second instance, again, it's a global customer, a big customer. They had an on-premise deployment, and then they recently moved into Azure, and the system was slow overall. And we could see from our own previous metrics that every menu option, key menu options had slowed down. And this was a data connection and analysis challenge. We had to turn on the heartbeat built into the Epicor system and at the operating system and the SQL level. And we ended up with a huge set of data. So we had to create a special tools based on Python to model and visualize and analyze this data. We segmented this to define the approach and identify the issues. What happened was that there was issues in the networking. The latency between the servers was very high. And also there was an issue with the CPU. So we asked the customer to deploy the servers using accelerated networking to reduce the latency and to move to the higher Azure size, which has got a better CPU. A few of the methods needed code optimization, and there were a couple of BAQs which needed redesigning. Nitish, do you want to touch upon the APAC and the Americas?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just remembering those days where you had your long-run Python scripts that's running through the millions of codes, isn't it? All right, I'm going to share some of the experience obviously we work together, so all this goes between us. So there's this customer which I want to take a couple of customers. We have an APAC-based customer who has leaders in the pollution control products. They had a consistent performance issues affecting users across sites around Europe, where they recently started implementation. We actually started running the performance suites from the APAC site to make sure that we have a value to compare, because that's the logical thing to do. And it's found out that it's funny that with the spec that customer had, we actually found that we had an improvement opportunity in the APAC site itself. So we end up correcting the respective flags on APAC first to arrive into a better throughput, like ad hoc SQL loads when we end up correcting the site in the Europe afterwards. That was to do more with the presentation layer of an application. So then we realized there is a difference for satisfied performance and the maximum performance that it can arrive into. And we end up in doing further deeper analysis to correct some of this codes and optimize it for that particular site, which turns out to be one of the very happy customers that they realized afterwards that they had a problem in their site where they didn't realize before. And then we had a customer in Americas. They were leaders in the automotive parts manufacturer. They actually raised the performance issue after onboarding a specific site. That was a very interesting assignment too. Of course, we corrected some of the preliminary measures like modifying some, SQL level things such as the parameterizations or parallelism, etc. But it turns out that we had users submitting reports and dashboards specific to the site like numerous times. Of course, we could treat those as a training issues. However, we then started realizing that the queries are creating, or the queries that they have created, was basically taking a surplus amount of RAM, and in fact witnessed a memory leak in it. It was interesting that we could end up correcting these queries itself to produce a better result. Well, that's a brilliant thing to do, because we realized the fact that it's been taken care of. This is exactly what Rama was trying to explain on onboarding a site. You needed to test certain things in the beginning of the slide. So we were trying to do an exercise to understand what's causing it. Turns out to be a training issue in the first place, but then later on we realized it's a blocking of the SQLs, and then it essentially affects the RAM of the systems, which in fact in terms of memory leak into that system. Right, as like the Captain America says, I could do this all day. It's not gonna basically end. Obviously, we had got a lot of customers. We've done a lot of performance projects in the past. We do have a time limitation at this point. So these are the few customers which we have experienced in the past. This was very typical on different cases, essentially. Hence, we want to point out it. There seems to be many customers who lacks their basic checks in their infrastructures and etc. Which is obviously we were trying to help many in this region and the region around the world. All right, Sri, and now over to you.
Hey, Nitish and Rama, thank you so much for a wonderful session. For the viewers, I would talk like 2 to 3 minutes about Ruka and our offerings, followed by question answers. We can take the questions, so feel free to post your questions on the panel that you're seeing. You may reach out to our team, info@rhinix.com, for evaluation and an assessment of your existing landscape, and we can help you to make your infrastructure in line with Epicor to perform better. We can provide you a recommendation and complement your existing consulting partner or a Epicor directly, whoever you work with. And we do have an offering called Premium Support, which is like something we have done for a very large global customer covering at least 20 countries. And we have a dedicated team of people who follow ITAL-based best practices, caters close to 3,000 plus tickets in a month, largely diversified, and works 24/7. So we have a team who can support you, and this is the support model we offer. You can leverage, a better value and level of service with the specialized support desk teams to provide you advanced problem solution. And we have a strong and hyper-responsive team to provide you a very, very proactive support and help you to identify and resolve the potential problems and issues related to performance and things so on and so forth. Couple of minutes about Ruka. Ruka is a global company with strong presence in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. We are constantly focused on mid-market with a strong multicultural and multilingual team who understands your regional need. That's the key here. We strongly believe that business can achieve the desired performance when it is aligned to the business strategy and operational business needs. Delivering value to your business is the mandate of every CTO and IT organization, which is part of the team. We create truly a unique value proposition through our cutting-edge solution that leverage global cost models and best-in-class service by local experts. We offer the above said services through 4 different pillars of delivery. Talking about the first pillar of delivery, which is ERP on cloud, Ruka is an Epicor Platinum Partner and 2 times winner of International Partner of the Year. We have immense experience and expertise in providing Epicor implementation and support services to our global customers for the past 7 years. We have executed projects more than 30 countries and have 250 plus associates serving 5 of the global Fortune 500 companies, and are proud to be serving our happy customers across these locations. As a second pillar, we do product development. One of our flagship products is Merlin, which is a strategic sourcing solution that offers seamlessly integrated sourcing process automation along with supplier relationship management and planning, functions augmented by advanced analytics and artificial intelligence. It plays a pivotal role in enhancing collaboration between buyers and suppliers through an intuitive platform. The other products that we offer are Ruka, that offers collaboration between employee community, especially in current business context, empowering employees to work from virtual office. The third product we offer is Expensa, which is for expense management solution, and it's available over the cloud. The third pillar we have is connecting the enterprises together, which is Surround IT. And we are a certified Microsoft Gold partner, delivering solution in the space of IoT, business intelligence, e-commerce portals, B2B and B2C, web and mobile applications. The fourth pillar of our expertise is consulting and advisory services, wherein we leverage our industry experts from supply chain and manufacturing domain, provide complete portfolio rationalization for information technology landscape, and also provide you optimized services specific to your existing portfolio. So that's the set of offerings that is available from the Ruka. We would take the question answers now. Feel free to shoot your questions to the panel that is available. I would take these questions, and we will seek the expert guidance from our team panel members. Okay, we have a few questions here. I will read out the question. Thank you, Gauri, for this question. The question is, I already have an Epicor partner. Am I allowed to work with you, or should I get back to my partner or Epicor directly for performance enhancement? I think I briefly touched on this topic. Ruka comes with a very unique blend of resources, because we are 200 plus associates, 250 plus associates in the company, and 100 plus associates in Epicor consulting spectrum, all under one roof. And our help or our solution and our assessment is going to complement your existing relationship with the partner or Epicor directly. In no way we would work as a competition for the current partner or Epicor, whomsoever you are availing services from. Our efforts and our services would complement your existing channel partner or the Epicor principal. So I hope that answers your question. We have one more question from Gauri. Maybe Nitish, you can help me to get this done. Do we have direct impact on writing BPM and customization? That is
all right. Thank you so much, Gauri, for joining today in our webinar and spending some time. So the question is essentially, do we have a direct impact? Of course you do, on a fair point, because when you start writing, you're trying to modify the standard business objects behaviors on multiple ways. So that's actually an advantage of a service-oriented architecture, though. So you get an opportunity to modify things with the way that you want it to be, basically, isn't it? So, and obviously, everybody will have to do one or the other BPMs and customizations according to the requirement, which makes sense. But if you end up writing, as I was just mentioning, that our second position in our podium goes to the BPMs and precedence over in transaction directives, which means you are trying to directly hit the databases. So if you do not specify the transaction scope, which is something a linked language, but however, we have a scope in it. And if you don't do a transaction scope, and if you start writing loops such as for each and for each inside of for each, that sort of requirements can essentially break the system, because it could potentially go into an infinite loop, like I was explaining before, and that can potentially cause an issue. So That is something I wanted to mention. I hope that answered. So there is an impact if you do not write it properly. Sri, do we have questions?
Yeah, thank you, Nitesh. The voice was broken. So thank you for the answer. We have a few more questions. I will read the next one. This is also connected with BAQ. Would you please help to answer this? What is the first step to identify a BAQ is designed badly?
Okay.
Niveda, so it will be great if you can help me.
All right, thank you so much, Niveda, for joining. And yes, what's the first step? Okay, so you can easily figure it out from this, the way that you produces an execution time in your BAQ's designer screen. That essentially tells you the fact that how much millisecond does it take to execute it, which is your actual first step in time. So you can understand that whether you have created the query properly, because there's a huge difference between even the joins that you're trying to put between the tables, obviously, isn't it? So the execution time that's been displayed on the BAQ query designer is easier first endpoint. However, as I mentioned, there's this blog which we have written, and it's there in the Rainix blog.com, that actually talks about the execution plan, where the Epicor can produce an execution plan, and that execution plan will help you to understand the cost of all those spendings in your so-called SQL query plans. So that way you can essentially figure it out. The first is the basic check must be your execution time, and then later on, if you think that you cannot identify it, then you needed to go one step ahead and figure it out an execution plan. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Nitesh. There's one more. Probably I will seek help from Rama. What has the cost impact of changing real-life example? Are there any benchmarks? That's a question in terms of the cost.
There are a few factors in play when it comes to the investment needed to get better performance. The current state of infrastructure, when I mean the state is the current grades of the infrastructure, how good CPU, how good is the storage, how good is the networking, how good is the comms. And then is there enough spare capacity to scale up and scale out quickly? Now, these are the factors. Now, this situation can be different to different customers. On top of it, you have the level of customizations and integrations. So this situation can be very unique between customers. But generally, what we have seen is that it is less expensive to execute performance infrastructure projects on an Azure-based infrastructure, because most of the customers, they seem to have a good storage, a solid storage, SSD-based storage, premium disks. On-premise, we have seen many customers where the infrastructure grades were not right, and the infrastructure is very old, has not been renewed. In those instances, it can be a big technology change for them. So it's unfortunately a bit difficult to benchmark this and give you a sort of a formula, because every deployment is very unique in its own way.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Rama. We have a question from Mohammed Irfan. If we have a complex requirement to create BAQ that we believe will consume some memory, is there a way we can restrict users running it? Nitish, would you take this question?
I will certainly. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mohammed, for joining today. Yes, it's fairly a good question. So what happens if my requirement is really complex and I end up in creating a complicated BAQ? If I end up in joining the GL journal table with the part so it's gonna obviously take some memory. It depends, essentially. If you're intending to create a dashboard, it's not a good idea, because we need to figure out how to do that, basically, isn't it? Because it's going to be run by multiple users. So of course, if it's mapped to a menu, then you can basically do the menu securities to prevent it. That's fine. Now, if you have noticed, even in the BAQ, you have a security ID. So you can map the security ID in there. So any users who don't have the security access will essentially end up in not executing it. But if you wanted to extract the result out of the BAQ, that is where it makes a big difference. You could always schedule a BAQs to get to your outcome as an XML file or a .csv file, through the BAQ execution schedulers, which you can schedule probably on the dawn, sort of, not a peak time of yours, like probably midnight, which would essentially create this record into a specified location. Even more, if you're using the DMT, you could still schedule through the DMTs as a BAQ files, and you can get this output into a desired location wherever you want to. So, answering the questions, you do have an opportunity to create security roles inside the BAQ as well, but you do have an opportunity to extract the results if it's your requirement as an XML or CSV through the BAQ schedulers, which you can run it on non-peak hours. Make sense?
Good. Thank you, Nitish. Thank you, Mohammed, for the nice question. We have one more question that's there. This is from Durai. Durai, thank you for joining today. What are critical success factors for Epicor performance during implementation of the projects?
I'll take that one, Sri.
Yeah, please. Thank you, Rama.
Yeah, I think many times we have made the mistake of people make the mistake of approaching Epicor performance implementation as they give it a very technical treatment, and this is not just with Epicor, with many other applications. And I have to confess that during my early years, I've been the culprit as well. See, performance is the way I see it. It is a socio-technical issue. So there is a social aspect to it, right? Users are complaining they are not able to do their work on time, and they see broken data. The system is not stable. So that is the social side of it. And of course, it is technical. The fix is on the technical side of it. Operating system, SQL, IIS web server, networking, storage, and so on and so forth. So we need to have a solid start on the social side of things. We need to talk to the key stakeholders and have a solid problem definition. What is the actual issue? Now, in order to arrive at this definition, we may have to do some pre-analysis work. For example, in our highlight, we had to deploy the robotic process automation based suite to get an idea of what actually is what the users say is a bad performance. So a requirement, a solid definition of the requirement is a solid start, so that everybody is on the same page and they know that everybody is serious. And once that is done, we need to staff it with the right people, with the right skills. And then we need to approach the issue in a very structured way. Thankfully, Epicor is an application that lends itself to a very structured analysis. And once the analysis is done, we need to document the requirements in an easy manner so that the customer, IT, and business management are able to understand the importance and get motivated by the perceived benefits. Now, that final presentation is what that encourages the customer, IT, and the business management to make those changes on their infrastructure and system.
That's brilliant.
Great, thank you, Rama. Thanks a lot. I think there is one more question from Mohammed Irfan. Just curious, how many Epicor implementations have you done so far, and how many in USA? I would take that question.
Yeah.
As I don't know, see, we have done Epicor implementation for more than 30 countries as a part of very large implementation rollout. Of course, both South America and North America, we have done implementations. At least 10 plus sites we can quote as references specific to Americas alone. Due to confidentiality, I may not be able to tell you the customer names. However, have extensive global experience, and at least 50 plus implementations are done end-to-end, 50 plus. Okay, that is our overall strength in this area. Just to give you a brief about our capability, Ruka, originally we are not a regular run-on-the-mill kind of implementation partner for Epicor. We started our relationship with Epicor probably like 10 years back in terms of developing few products and solutions for them specific to country-specific functionality development, CSF. If in Epicor's paradigm, if you look at it, it's called CSF, So we had a product development team which worked very close with Epicor's product development team from Minneapolis. We had teams working from Mexico, and also their team from Russia joined us for a period of time. And that's how the journey began. And over a period of time, we got expertise in building our consulting capability. We were able to successfully do a lot of value-added resell over the region on the consulting side, besides our product development expertise. Now, what we are doing currently in order to provide more value to our customers, we are building a lot of verticalized solutions on top of Epicor, which is very specific to industries. Say, for example, the process manufacturing industry, you would appreciate Epicor being a discrete manufacturing industry-oriented product. And Ruka has built a vertical on top of the process. Similarly, if you look at verticals like EPC, cable manufacturing, interior designs, construction, those are the different verticals we are built on top of Epicor. So our capability in specific segment is certainly quite superior, and that is definitely attained over a period of time by means of working really hard and a lot of brilliant minds with us, putting together certain best practices in terms of technology, project management, in terms of project governance. All together, we can provide a successful winning formula to our esteemed customers. I hope I answered your question. Feel free to reach out to us. Maybe we can have a one-on-one discussion, and we'll be happy to take your questions specific to your implementation or performance, so to speak, and we'll be able to take in the right direction. Thank you for your active participation. I believe that's the last question of today. We do not have further questions, and we have 4 more minutes. Maybe I can wait for a minute, and we can close the call.
Yeah, makes sense.
Raman, thank you so much for your insightful session today. It was
Thank you, Sri.
helpful indeed, and a very good enlightening session for our team, and definitely for people who joined over the web to put certain things into the perspective. And there is a specialized team available who can help them. Very specific to performance optimization in the Epicor paradigm is something we can offer, and it's a very, very niche and special service.
I appreciate it, Sri.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Have a great day ahead. We are closing the call. We would make this recording available to you over the YouTube in next few days. Watch our space nation sessions as we go forward. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead for the folks joined from US, and good night for the people from Middle East and India. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.